birthday cake and balloon, clowns, helicopters, yachts, lots of lip smacking, both kissing and Clayton smacking his own lips, 2 villains, and lots of drama, all on the second night of The Bachelor. So we make it back to the Bachelor mansion. The girls are so awestruck, you'd think it was a Sistine Chapel, the way they talk about it being a religious experience. But weren't the girls at the mansion the night before for the limo? Let me know in the comments below what you thought. Now the women are so excited about the date card, and the episode says, for the group date, the title is What Dreams Are Made Of. You gotta wonder what that's gonna be. But I love that Gabby says,
I'm so excited. I'm dying to know what dreams are made of, because I do forget a lot of my dreams.
The ladies on the first group date meet up with Clayton in Beverly Hills. The date is at a great mansion where there's a big group of children jumping in a bouncy house. Hilary Duff walks into the group and Cassidy freaks out, tells her that she was the first concert she ever went to. Hilary Duff is a mom of 3 and she's there to help Clayton get a sense of which of the women is most interested in children. The women are tasked with setting up a birthday party for Maya. They have to decorate a cake, do balloons, work as clowns, and build a dollhouse. It turns out that Hilary Duff is cross-promoting her new show. And how appropriate that the name of the date was also her song, What Dreams Are Made Of. Hilary says she's a super fan of the show, but let's face it, Hilary could have carried that show herself. She's a legend. We get to the duties of the party, and as usual, there's always one standout who thinks she's too good to do any work.
I don't really care if Hilary Duff is disappointed in my dollhouse abilities or the girls are a little miffed. Like, ultimately, I'm here to date Clayton.
Cassidy reminds me of Corinne Olympios. Do you remember Corinne? She was too good to shovel, but only Corinne was a funny one. Now the other women are pissed, especially Gabby, who has to do the group project alone. And with all the loud kissing between Clayton and Cassidy, I don't know about you, but I didn't see it so much as being about chemistry as much as Clayton being flattered. But Cassidy herself can't read the room. She calls the kids little people. Maya, the birthday girl, calls her out and says, "Really? You don't like children?" Because let's face it, Clayton certainly does. Finally, during the night portion of the date, Clayton connects with Serene. Serene really does love children. Let's face it, she's a teacher.
I'm a teacher. Today was that much more fun for me.
Hi.
But you know, I'm here for a reason and I'm here for him, and so that's obviously my priority. I just really want to make the time that I have with Clayton count.
You got ball energy today.
Like Michelle and Clayton's mom. Cassidy, meanwhile, is bragging to all the other women, to the camera, of course, that she's a front runner, and to the women that they have an amazing connection. Teddy finally pulls Clayton aside and she says, "Do you still like me?" And he tells Teddy there's nothing for her to be concerned about. And let's face it, it looks like Clayton is having a good time. In the end, he gives the date rose to Cassidy, but the faces of the women and their disappointment, as well as mine, shows it all. Next up, we see Cassidy and Shanae chatting about how to be aggressive. Cassidy's coaching Shanae. They look like the 2 girls from the White Chicks, only they're not the it girls and they're not that funny. Now we get to the first one-on-one date, and the card reads, "Susie, let's take our love to new heights." What's fascinating is how important the first date actually is. I don't know if you knew this, but on Bachelor Data, 50% of the women who go on the first one-on-one date go on to become the next bachelorette. Susie, I'm guessing, though, has maybe a fear of heights because she's stressed out over the date title. They pull up to a helicopter, though, and I'm guessing finally she can breathe a little bit because she now finds out she doesn't have to bungee jump. Clayton and Susie fly over the mansion, and the girls don't even bother waving. Well, of course they're a little bit jealous, especially the pilot, Rachel. And eventually they dock on a yacht. Clayton says that he sees how much fun and adventuresome Susie is, and they do look to have a nice connection. Susie certainly does look a lot like another beauty contestant, Hannah Brown, because Susie herself was Miss Virginia, I believe. And she has a good vibe. She's cute and playful. I do like the interaction between her and Clayton. And Clayton looks like a kid in a candy store. He is excited. Finally, in the evening portion of the one-on-one, we get a little bit more depth, and Susie confides in Clayton that her father went into organ failure the year before, and it was extremely scary. And he fought to survive so that he could hold his grandson. What a sweet story. Susie also said that her mom slept in a little chair by his bed the whole time that he was in the ICU, and that her parents are her role model, similar to what Clayton says about his parents as well. It's a nice connection between the two of them. After that amazing date, they now get a private concert by Amanda Jordan, who's singing I Choose You. I secretly hope that maybe Hilary Duff would be the one singing. And here we now see Clayton. He is a sensitive guy, right? He's a little bit sappy, and he tells Susie, your true colors are so beautiful. And he offers Susie the date rose. And Susie says yes, of course. She sees potential in Clayton. Meanwhile, Shanae is tutoring. Cassidy is tutoring Shanae how to get Clayton's attention. And I suppose the tips are because they're maybe going to be the only two friends in the house. But the group date card arrives, and it's Marlena, Elizabeth, Kate, Sarah, Lindsay, Rachel, Tessa, and Shanae on the group date. I don't want anything to stand in the way of our love, is what the card reads. What could this be? Unfortunately, poor Jill, who's not on the date card, has a moment, and she says, I think I'd rather be with my cat than be here. I have to say, Jill, it's pretty relatable. But the second group date, we meet a woman by the name of Zwef. She's a comedian, and by this point, I feel like we need some comic relief. She's a popular comedian, and she's there to take the ladies to school. The women sit at desks, and she has them.
Now, let's start with a little game. We're going to play a little psychological thriller I call Never Have I Ever.
They talk about sending nudes, faking an orgasm, cheating, and have you ever felt judged by another woman in the house? Shanae, who now calls herself Shanae, is now up there dancing in front of the group. Next up, the women are outside on the obstacle course, and the prize to win extra time with Clayton is to go through all the dating kind of thirst traps and the breadcrumbs and breaking down the walls, which I thought was actually pretty creative. But this is where we see the aggression starts. And Shanae would say, well, all is fair in love and war, but what would you say? I thought it was a bit much. Finally, Sarah wins, and she does get a little kiss, but it doesn't seem to be like such a big treat, and let's face it, it looked like the date was a big mess. Finally, the women get to get cleaned up from all the milk that's been spilled all over them, all the gunk, and that evening they have a chance to spend a little bit more time with Clayton. Of course, Shanae's still going in there to try to see if she can stand out. But instead, Elizabeth gets Clayton to chat with her first. And Shanae throws a fit. She's crying. She's upset, feeling like she's been dissed. But in the meantime, we see Clayton having a great time with Sarah, Marlena, Rachel. Finally, Shanae gets her time with Clayton, but she uses her time to talk about what she calls Elizabeth's red flags. But we don't see a lot of context here. She calls Elizabeth out for being two-faced. But what is the example? We all know by using your time talking about the other person, it's never a good outcome. But then, of course, Clayton feels like he needs to act upon this information. He pulls Elizabeth aside to talk about what Shanae has just mentioned to her. Now, Elizabeth, thank goodness, has a chance to respond, and she tells Clayton, well, after all, it was Shanae who actually took me down and knocked me out. And at that point, Clayton doesn't know what to do with the information. So Elizabeth goes back to the group, and she asks Shanae, hey, can we talk? Shanae tells Elizabeth that she feels ignored. Seems like a bit much. Elizabeth says it's her processing issues a result of having ADHD. But isn't it a lot of Shanae to expect of another woman, all this attention? And why is Shanae so obsessed with Elizabeth? Is it her job to keep her preoccupied? Elizabeth explains to Shanae that what might be the case is that she has processing issues due to her ADHD. ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, a neurodevelopmental disorder which affects about 11% of school-aged children. But the symptoms can continue well into adulthood in more than 3/4 of cases. And ADHD is characterized by developmentally inappropriate levels of attention, inattention, or attention, impulsivity, and hyperactivity. And as such, Elizabeth explains that she has difficulty following multiple conversations at a time. Elizabeth really does try the best that she can to connect with Shanae and says, wow, I can see that you were hurt. But she wants Shanae to know that it's not intentional. But it's not Elizabeth's fault, at least in the edit that we see. And now Shanae has to admit that she did also push Elizabeth. She doesn't deny it. Clayton finally decides to give the group date rose to Sarah. No drama there. But let that be a lesson, ladies, that Shanae and Elizabeth continued their battle in front of the other women, and we all just get a little bit overwhelmed with it. For the most part, the women take Elizabeth's side because, let's face it, Shanae challenging Elizabeth's mental health is not a good look at all. And it's really impossible to dig yourself out of a hole like that. But I really think this was a poor choice on production's part. This is a sensitive topic, ADHD and mental health, one that many people can relate to. And when someone else brings it up as if it's your issue, that's the wrong part here. In many ways, Shanae could have handled it much differently. But questioning the accuracy of Elizabeth's own diagnosing or suggesting she was faking it is really problematic. And I don't believe that Elizabeth deserved this unwanted attention. Fast forward, we get to the rose ceremony cocktail party. And Elijah pulls Clayton aside because she hasn't had a single moment with him. But she handles it well. She takes out a homemade scrapbook and starts to talk about her and Clayton starting to make some memories together. Clayton says it's a great idea and that that's a perfect memory. Unfortunately, we have more drama again because Shanae and Elizabeth can't let it go. Shanae at least is holding on to this negativity and says, like, we've gone backwards. At this point, Elizabeth has nothing else to do, but she has to set a boundary with Shanae. Elizabeth says, I'm sorry, I can't have this conversation, and says I'm out. But another whole sub-story that's happening is about Cassidy. Cassidy tells Sierra in a casual conversation that she's got someone at home, a friends with benefits situation, and that she's going to watch the show with her guy when she gets back. But Sierra feels compelled to tell Clayton, and Clayton is taken aback, as most leads are with this type of information. Let's face it, Clayton's already lost 3 women before the first rose, and now he has to wonder who's there for the right reason. And it doesn't matter that Clayton himself has 22 women to choose from. He's upset that Cassidy has a situation like that back home. So Clayton himself calls Jesse over and asks, has anyone ever taken a rose back? In summary, I guess you could say that Clayton is a sensitive guy, but as I said last week, I'm beginning to wonder how decisive he is and whether, again, we're seeing signs of an anxious attachment style. This week, I would say that he was easily influenced by Cassidy. He also failed to set limits, like he didn't stop Cassidy or say, wait, I need to spend time with the other women. Instead, Clayton gives Cassidy the group rose for being aggressive. This sends a message. And he also applauds Shanae for speaking up. My question is, does Clayton think that these women are wallflowers and he's encouraging them to speak up? Because I don't think these either two women are wallflowers at all. What do you think? Let me know in the comments. But the women who did impress me are Susie, Serene, Teddy, and Elizabeth. And if I had to give my crown to anyone, I would give it to Elizabeth. She was under attack this week, and I thought she handled it like a champ. Of course, we didn't get to see the entire piece. We don't know what Elizabeth did or didn't do, but from the edits, it looks like she did a nice job talking about her condition, and she did set a boundary. I applaud her for that. Let me know what you thought about episode 2 in the comments, and it'll be 2 weeks before the next episode.